On today's show, Laura Heywood interviews
Broadway icon and Tony Award winner Alice Ripley. Welcome to Laura Heywood Interviews. I'm Laura Heywood, and my guest today is one of the heavyweights of the American musical theater, a Tony winner for her star turn as Diana in the Pulitzer Prize winning musical Next to Normal. Alice Ripley is known worldwide for show-stopping roles, including those in Sideshow, for which she was also Tony nominated alongside Emily Skinner, The Rocky Horror Show, The Who's Tommy, Les Miserables, James Joyce's The Dead, Sunset Boulevard, and my personal favorite, American Psycho, which I saw 7 times in its heartbreakingly brief 7-week run back in 2016. Alice Ripley, based on skill, reputation, and resume, could very easily be the kind of artist who relegated herself only to massive scale, name and lights, Tony-eligible roles. She certainly earned it, but that is what makes it particularly impressive that she's here today promoting a one-woman monologue show at The Cell, a 60-seat venue in Chelsea. In The Pink Unicorn from Out of the Box Theatrics, Alice plays Trisha Lee, a Christian widow in Texas whose world is shaken when her 14-year-old child, Jolene, announces that they are not in fact female, but instead genderqueer, changing their name to Joe, launching a gay-straight alliance, and introducing their mom to the concept of gender-neutral pronouns. Trisha is totally thrown for a loop, hurled out of her comfort zone, and the show takes us through the complex journey of navigating the conservative community as well as her own biases and the challenges of loving and accepting a child who defies expectations in service of being themselves. On a personal note, having Alice Ripley here is particularly meaningful to me. Every time I've seen Alice perform, whether it's as a character or in concert as herself, I've just felt a really strong connection with her through the work. As accepted, respected, and completely established as she is, there's still something that reads a little indie to me about Alice Ripley. She may be Broadway incarnate, but she's never lost her rock and roll. I hope my intention is clear here because I mean this with the utmost affection and respect. Alice Ripley is kind of a weirdo, the kind I strive myself to be, refusing to conform, committed to being her true self, embracing her uniqueness, living out loud, and doing whatever the hell makes her feel most alive. To quote Hunter Bell and Jeff Bowen's quirky, brilliant musical title of show, Alice Ripley, she's fierce. Please join me in welcoming Alice Ripley to Laura Heywood Interviews.
Laura, that was beautiful. Oh my gosh. I just feel all warm inside. I
Good.
Really do. That was, and you wrote that even before we met and had a nice conversation before the podcast started.
I know, yeah,
so
we
you
got
felt
to
that way about me before this.
Oh, of course. Yeah, I mean, I've always felt that way about you since, I was at the first Broadway preview of Next to Normal. I didn't know anything about it. And I remember being like, so when 2009, I was 30 years old, and I remember being like, I can't tell whether I'm Diana or whether what was Jen Damiano's character?
Natalie.
I'm like, Natalie. I was like, I feel like I'm equal parts both of them. And I have spoken pretty openly about my struggles with depression and anxiety, and while I didn't have the same mental illness struggles that Diana had, I do have my own ongoing struggles with those, and I also have been the teenager striving to make it and to not be defined by my family as much as my family is amazing. And so I remember just being so moved by your role and how much someone who could have been a character that could have been seen as like Looney Tunes was instead so relatable and identifiable, even if you never have had that exact same struggle.
Thank you so much for all of that. It's interesting because I usually say, if somebody asks, I'll say, people might say, I'm a Gabriel, I'm a Dan, I'm a Diana, I'm a Natalie. Well, I'm definitely a Natalie for sure.
You are?
We made Diana up. My family's crazy, but a different kind of crazy, not that kind of crazy. And I always have to mention our director, Michael Greif, because I learned so much about the actor-director relationship on that show. Mm-hmm. Meaning, I don't have anything without him telling me that works or that doesn't work. Do a little less, do a little more, go more in that direction. Or just asking, are you all right, supporting. Because the role demands a lot. And I thought I was the only one that was being demanded of, but everybody in all the casts I was in, they were all just being the brave soldier and taking on the voice that you take on when you become kind of like a voice for that community.
I can only imagine the stresses that puts on you.
It was an honor and it was stressful. But it was mostly an honor because what I was told by these people, is that they had never seen themselves portrayed, or their mother or their uncle, or the person that they know that has the struggle, right? They had never seen that portrayed in such a real, caring way.
Yeah,
a
the empathy.
360-degree way. And I think that it's not to say those other portrayals were wrong. It's just to say that we're at that point now. We're ready to watch something real. Because it's brutal. It's brutal what Diana goes through, you know. And what Diana's going through is grief. And my personal belief, you know, and then we don't have to talk about Diana anymore, but we could talk about her all day, really, because, you know, I learned so much. But I think that Diana doesn't think she's crazy. I don't think... It's my job to think Diana isn't crazy. She's not... I'm grieving.
Yeah.
And everybody around me, they don't know what to do. They want to help, but they don't know what to do, so it makes them uncomfortable.
And they're not seeing
and then I don't know
necessarily
what to do,
the
because
whole.
I want them to be happy. Yes, exactly. So part of it is the allowance of letting a character like Diana rule the stage for a couple hours and letting it impact you. And you know what, Laura? It did. And I watched, you know, these big football-type guys with gray hair just sobbing, just their whole body's shaking. And it's a good thing to cry. It's a good thing to laugh. You know, it's a good thing to let somebody have it and then apologize. It's good to just experience all of your feelings, and that's how the show was described, as a feel everything musical.
Totally.
The Pink Unicorn, you know, it's not a bad segue to just go, well, the Pink Unicorn, from where my perspective, standing on stage, watching the audience, it's a totally different story, of course. But it's a similar kind of profound impact that the audience isn't necessarily expecting. They're not necessarily expecting to have a piece speak for them. In a way, especially about this subject. And what I like to say, and I'll say right off the bat, is Pink Unicorn, and I think I speak for the whole team, it is definitely not the last word. It's the opening conversation here.
About, when you say the last word, do you mean about the subject of like growing up genderqueer or having a child you don't quite understand?
About anything, because we touch on alcoholism, which is, that's the part that is, you know, nobody really, you don't focus on that because Jolene's story that's not her story, but Trisha's brother Junior is an alcoholic, and I, as Trisha, I share that impact that it has on me, and that's going to help too. It's going to help bring people together and show that vulnerability is still possible, even if it feels impossible because of that disease. But mostly the show is about, yes, but I would say about the gender neutrality and the gender fluidity, and the pronoun they and them is one of the major things that my character learns about. And the whole play is really just one monologue that lasts for 48 pages. And if you pick it up and look at it, it looks like a book with no breaks.
48 pages.
And I got it a year in advance, so I'm thinking, I can do this. And I'm telling you, there was a point I was thinking maybe I should turn back, which I don't do that. But I was really worried if I was going to be able to bring her to life, because it was just so concentrated, and she's really different than me. And it took me a while to grapple with some of the language that she uses.
Like what?
I don't even want to say the word, because I don't say the word Jew.
Okay.
She does.
It's okay, that
Look,
kind of
it's
thing.
not-
I didn't know
it
if you
doesn't have
meant
to be-
regionalisms or...
Well, that too, though. That too, wrapping your mouth around, your tongue around, well, that just made me madder than a polecat in a coop full of rubber chickens. You know, it's funny, but does it have anything to do with the story?
Well, right.
I
It's
don't
funny
know.
out of context right
not
now.
sure.
You know.
I'm not sure we need to see Trisha as a, you know, somebody silly at that point, because we are serious. I mean, we're really dealing with something real here, but it is very funny. I think of it as a comedy, Pink Unicorn. I really do, even though there are these really serious moments, and I talk about some brutal stuff. But some of these characters that I take on, because I take on their voices and their personalities, I didn't really want to be some of these people.
I can imagine. Well, so this is a rare occasion where I'm actually talking to you about a project I haven't seen.
That was the answer to your first question, by the way. It went on for like 4 minutes.
I know, we're 10
That's
minutes
Alice
in.
Ripley.
But you know what? That's one of the reasons that I wanted to do a full hour is, you know, people often will say like, oh, do you want to come? You can come interview so-and-so on the red carpet. And I'm like, that's not an interview. That's a soundbite. I want to be able to get a 10-minute answer to a
because
question.
Then you can go in and I do try to keep it succinct, but I get excited.
But
Somebody actually wants to hear what I have to say.
You don't have to explain that to me. I'm like I'm literally a professional enthusiast. You let me get excited about just about anything, and I will find a way to do it. And people around me get excited about it too. And I've made a living at it. I usually say I won't interview someone if I haven't seen the project they're promoting, because I don't want to be like, what's it about? And have the same interview that everybody else does. But this is a show that had a run. It was extended. It finished the run, and now it's at a new venue. I unfortunately didn't have a chance to see it last time, but the new run is so limited. It's August 13th to August 25th, that if I had seen it and then scheduled the interview, it would have aired after the show was over. So I was like, I will not pass up a chance to interview Alice Ripley. I'll do as much research as I can about the Pink Unicorn, and then I'll go and see it afterward.
And some things have developed in just the past week or so that might be interesting to you about the piece.
How so?
Well, we're going to make at least the playwright's going to make some changes.
Oh my gosh, after you memorize the 48 pages, now you have to re-memorize?
I know, my stage manager, she was amazing, Teresa, in the first run. She started sending me line notes, like the first day of rehearsal. I wrote her, I was like, I love you, please don't. After we close, you can send me line notes. Because this has to be frozen right now, because we have 8 days.
Woof.
Mm-hmm. The first weekend was a little rough. The first couple of shows I called for a line.
I should hope so.
Absolute nightmare.
You can't just go into that white room by yourself.
It's a nightmare, because once you get off the page, that's one thing. But then you realize, wait a minute, now I have to stand and talk without stopping for an hour and a half. No break for water, no break for an intermission. The script actually gives the option of an intermission. But I instinctively strongly felt at the very beginning that's not going to help, because we're building the story and I want them to get caught up in it, And so it's an immersive experience where you go in and you're at a church retreat or some kind of support group retreat that's not religious. I don't know, it's some kind of like encounter moment with the soul. And you sit down in a pew and somebody gives you a little program, and there are refreshments. There's wine and cookies.
Wait a second, the ticket price includes wine?
Well, no, wine is extra, but there's sweet tea, only sweet, because, we're at a church
Texas.
meeting after all. Yeah, we are supposed to be, I think we probably are in Texas. And then there are cookies that you can eat. I didn't have a single cookie throughout the entire run, because I have to be like Bernadette Peters. She says, there are no crackers allowed in the house. And so no crackers are allowed in my house, and I'm not allowed to have those extra cookies.
Is that because, for just a diet reason?
Yeah.
Got it.
And plus, if you eat cookies, now we're on a different subject, but
we have all the time in the world.
Then you're not hungry for food.
Right.
So you got to make sure you eat food.
So
if
if they had
really
celery sticks, you'd allow yourself.
I'd eat some celery sticks, yeah, definitely. And then if you eat enough celery sticks, you're like, now I can have a cookie, because I had 20 celery sticks.
Yep, that's how I do it.
But celery is actually really good for you. We should do a health and nutrition, or I always wanted to do I'm on a different page, but Ask Alice. Ask Alice would be like somebody writing in with just any kind of advice that they needed, like Dear Abby used to do.
Where, here at DNR Studios, we're very close to the theater district, and we have all this beautiful studio space. If you want to start an Ask Alice podcast, I will totally help you with it. You can come and do it in this space.
And see how people respond to that suggestion when they hear this podcast.
I'll introduce you to Derek and Romaine, the D.
Callers.
Yeah.
Asking live questions. Could be fun.
Yeah, we get some via social media.
Well, you'd have to help me, because I couldn't do it all by myself.
I mean,
gotta have a partner.
Oh, you're threatening me with the opportunity to work with Alice Ripley on a regular basis. I mean, don't tempt me. I'll actually do it. So Pink Unicorn, I just want to say right off the bat, tickets are available at ootbtheatrics.com. That's Out of the Box Theatrics. And the Cell is this remarkable space. Have you started working in that space yet?
Next week, but next week we start rehearsal. But I just did an event called Manhattan Sideways. It's a company that goes through all the side streets in Chelsea and gets the businesses, gives them some support and gets them connected to other businesses in the neighborhood.
How do I not know about this? I live in Chelsea.
You know how you never go down you go down the same side street?
Of course.
Find yourself on a different side street, and you're like, I can't believe I've never walked down the street before. I've lived here for 20 years. So anyway, it was to promote that, and Liz is the place is in Chelsea, and so she kind of hosted it at the Cell.
Right on
And
23rd.
I got up and talked about myself, of course. Talked about the pink unicorn and did a little sample of the show.
So you were talking about the fact that changes are being made to the script. Also, I imagine it was a huge challenge just to learn in order all of those words. And, every time I have a guest on Laura Heywood Interviews, I ask them to bring in a charity that is important to them, and we usually get to that at the end of the show. So we will do some official discussion about that. But yours, the one that you chose to bring in, is the Alzheimer's Foundation, and it occurred to me, and we had a little dialogue about this before the mics were on, that learning something, that forcing your brain to push itself and challenge itself is actually strengthening for it. And I don't think there's ever been any official medical studies that I know of about memorization and Alzheimer's, but I know that when I am working hard on something that pushes me intellectually, it's like I can feel the muscles growing. It's the same as lifting weights, but for the brain.
I think that you're right. I think when you use your body to then create some kind of result that comes out of your brain, does that make any sense?
Yes.
I think being a performing artist, being a singer, you read music and you take it in through one sense, it goes in through your brain and it comes out through another sense and is received by another sense. This has to be good. This has to be good. I mean, I really believe, I'm no expert, I'm no doctor, but I do believe that Alzheimer's is encouraged by a lack of emotional connection in the brain, actual electricity, and that's put there by emotions. Again, I have nothing. I just figured this out on my own. This is what I think, because I'm in the middle. I'm over the hill now, and you think about these things, and I feel like my brain works better now than it did before I memorized the pink unicorn. That's all. And I'm the only one who can say that. Nobody can tell me that it works better.
Right.
More than I can understand it myself, because I'm with my brain all the time. Sometimes I do leave it behind, but today I brought it with me. But I'm bummed.
Do you meditate at all?
I do, yeah. And I also think that you can turn anything into a meditation.
I totally agree. It's all about being present.
Yeah, and we go to yoga class to learn how to do yoga so we can practice on our own, because we only have 5 minutes, or we want to do it for a whole weekend. It's kind of that way too, with the way that anything that you have that you learn, then you can just go off and practice it on your own.
Do you ever get to a point, whether it's with this Pink Unicorn script or another project, where the words are coming out of your mouth, they're going straight from your brain to your mouth without going through your thoughts? You don't know what you're going to say, but it still comes out?
Yeah, that's what ended up happening with this, and it was a trip. And you really only get there when you totally, for lack of a better description, let go and just trust. There's something about, and this has been great, I've been telling my students about this lately because it was one of those shifts for me. When you realize that the material is not going to change. That's why I panicked when Teresa was like, here are some line notes. I'm going, wait a minute, but that's different than the script I memorized. She said, yeah, but they've made some changes. And I said, no. And they actually said, okay.
That's incredible power as an actor.
Well, the thing is, I think they sensed that I knew what I needed, and they just wanted to give that to me. The women who are the team, the support team here, the production team, the director, the playwright, stage manager, the producer, they're all these amazing women. So, so there was a moment where I thought, geez, I don't know if I can really do this, and then they told me that I could, and I decided you just keep going back to the material. You just keep going back to the material, keep going back to the material. I tried to do it on my own, but I could only get about 14 pages off the script, and then once I started working with a dialect coach when we were in rehearsal then, I was so far off course because I was talking way too fast, which was the number one thing I needed to slow down. And once I found the rhythm of how now I've decided it's finite. You have to give me that. It's fixed. Because what I was saying a few minutes ago is once you realize that you can trust this fixed material, it's not going to change. It's not going to suddenly, this paragraph's going to be here, or that's going to be paraphrased to here, or that you even have the right to paraphrase or flip things around. That's not acceptable in my world.
You know what it reminds me of?
I think Elise would probably go, it's all right if you have to, it's fine. And my director was she was like, you're going to get it, it's fine. The paragraph was here, it should have been there. And somebody else might have gone, that's good enough. But really it isn't. Not just because I have a high standard for what I want to do on stage, but really it's actually because the secret to the character is in the rhythm of how the words come out. Mm-hmm. And that's always the same, because the words are always in the same order. You can change the inflection, but the rhythm is there, and so it makes it a really incredible piece. It's not just a bunch of words or a big long monologue like I might have thought at the beginning, or somebody else might think. It's this like a piece of music. It's and so once I kind of hooked into that made it easier to remember what came next. And when I started to paraphrase something, I knew that I was off. Because then I would go, now what's next?
The rhythm is
because I didn't have that connective hinge that always ends with da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
Before it goes into, but anyway.
It seems to me, it reminds me.
Because there are really some non sequiturs that are like, what just happened? Yeah. How am I going to fill that in?
I talk to a lot of athletes in my personal life. I'm very into fitness and exploring I sort of identify everything as athletics right now. And it seems to me like if you were a long-distance runner, for example, you get to know a certain trail, and you know where the little pothole is, and you know where the stone you have to jump over is.
That's exactly what I'm talking about, Laura.
Your pacing might be a little bit different, and you might...
The weather changes.
Yeah, exactly, but the trail is the same.
You run into things like snafus you didn't expect.
Right.
And how are you going to get out of it?
But
you still got to get to the
when
end.
you're on your home trail, it's going to be different than if you suddenly have to go run on a different course for the first time.
And when they give you changes at the last minute, this is why we're where we are doing what we do, because we have a knack for that. It's okay, we can implement them, but there might be. For me, there's always a process. It might take a night or two before I get that new scene or that new verse, because I was doing it this way, and there was a pattern that I was playing that I was really, really just relying on. So once I understood that when I trusted these words, really trusted them, the biggest part of it was out of the way then, because then I just had to memorize it. But you have to trust that it's going to be there, and that my paraphrasing it subconsciously is not going to improve on it.
Right.
I think if you approach it like you respect that it's done for a reason, and you don't think subconsciously you can improve on it, it makes it easier to memorize it word for word, and then the rhythm comes out, and then the character emerges, because the character talks in a musical rhythm. She's got a lilt and a musical dialect.
I love the fact that the word playwright is spelled WRIGHT, because that means that the play is not written, the play is wrought. The way that a piece of iron
metal
is wrought, it's sort of an archaic word that means to work. But we think of, it's like everybody knows how to write, but only a playwright is like an expert artisan at working the word. And I feel like
it's a very specific word.
It is,
even if it's between the or a.
Yeah, or if they write two or three
one.
In there, like Mamet is famous for.
And Albee does those ... dots, and when you observe that ... and you let it be in ellipses and just give it that 2 seconds, not even of airtime, the rhythm is going to take over, and you're going to find a better connection with the character and the material that way when you observe it. And that's why I love Albee, I love Mamet because of that, because they understand punctuation.
They're not just writing, they're
and also
working.
The stage directions, like Tennessee Williams and Arthur Miller. That's what I would like to add. Once this play becomes a script for Samuel French or wherever it goes, it's going to need. I want them to do the old-fashioned way, where they just describe the original production. They put the prop list in the back, and they tell the staging and the emotions and all that to kind of help, or how we conceive the immersive, just as a suggestion, to say, here's what we did. Because when you just look at the script and it just looks at you, just these pages, it's like, what is happening?
Yeah.
What is she saying, and who is this person?
You know what that reminds me of is I sort of feel like the opposite of your role in in The Pink Unicorn was when you were in The Dead, because there were
Molly Ivers.
that you had not the role itself necessarily, but like the amount of time you spent on stage versus how much time you were speaking, and how
it was all
little
about giving face and back in that
Yeah.
show. Like the second movement or whatever, I was like giving my back to the audience. It was my favorite part of the show, believe it or not.
and like if you just read the script, you'd know nothing about the production.
Oh, right. I know. It's true. Yeah. And I think that, Stephen Spinelli used to talk about The Dead, but then he would talk about, every show that we do. And I would listen because to me, he's royalty. And he said that, that we were creating this ecosystem that lives above the stage. And when the ghost light comes on, it goes away. Mm-hmm. That's all. It'll come back. But it's like this ecosystem, and we all rely on each other. And The Dead kind of... Oh, thanks for bringing that up, because it was beautiful. That's really what the whole show was.
Yeah.
So without the live performance, I don't know if you could really appreciate that script.
Have you gotten to go see Irish Rep's version, like immersive version of, they call it The Dead 1904? They
I haven't
perform
seen
it.
it, but I've heard about it.
It's
I know.
so incredible,
Really
and you
wanna
actually
go to
sit
that.
and eat dinner at the table with the family, and it's done in this I think
Do
it's
you eat like calves liver and blood pudding?
no, you do
Scottish
eat,
oats,
they-
even though they're in Ireland.
they eat they serve like, I don't know that it's actually mutton, but it's like, gamey meat and cranberries, and you're at their Christmas dinner, and they have celery
It's like you're in
sticks, which are
Dublin,
referenced
a turn
in the
of the last
script,
century,
and
yes.
they serve Irish whiskey. It's actually
Wow.
staged at the Irish American Historical Society.
I bet it's amazing.
You really should come and see it if they do it
it's
again
a great
this
company,
coming.
Irish Rep.
Yeah, it's fantastic. But I think that for you in particular, having been a part of a James Joyce production, like a production of James
I'd
Joyce's The
appreciate
Dead,
it.
to see it interpreted in a different way, I feel like it would make you nostalgic in all of the ways that a story about the holidays is supposed to make you nostalgic.
I'm sure I would appreciate it, yeah.
When I hear you talk about, Albee and all of these other kind of classic playwrights, but then I look at your resume of what you've done with, Yorkie and Kit, and with Duncan Sheik in American Psycho, which I can't even really reference without wanting
We
to
could
get
talk
all
about that
teary.
for the rest of the
For
hour.
American Psycho?
Because it was one of my favorite jobs I've ever had, and one of my favorite shows I've ever done, and I wish I could have seen it. I love the score. I think the score was totally overlooked.
It was, and it
I
still
think
is.
Benjamin Walker was absolutely phenomenal. I think
Totally
he should
robbed.
have won the Tony.
Me too.
I think that maybe look, when the first time they did Chicago, nobody liked it. Okay.
Well, I have made this prediction from the first time that
it was a
I
little
guess
too much for people.
it's going to come back, and it's going to have oh my gosh, now I'm blanking on the name of the director. Who's the director who does the actors playing instruments?
John
Doyle. I
Yes,
feel like
Doyle.
it's going to have a John Doyle.
I should have known that right off the bat.
I mean, I should have
I've
too.
never
I
worked
think
with him,
about
so
it all
I
the
don't know.
time.
This doesn't have anything to do with me. I don't think about it at all.
I don't know how I managed to blank it out, but I feel like it's going to have a John Doyle revival, and people
Let's
are going to
hope
be
so.
like, why didn't anybody notice this? And I also feel like
that's a good
many
idea,
more people are
actually.
going to claim to have seen it on Broadway than actually did.
Well, the book is just it's really hard to read. So, although Brett Ellis Easton,
Bret Easton Ellis.
I always just say it the wrong Bee. He is just like kind and unassuming and warm. I met him, but the book is very hard to read. So, maybe we have to give people a chance to get turned on by the dark humor that is Duncan Sheik's American Psycho, because it's different from the movie.
Yeah.
It's similar, but I think it's better. I think the story is better in a musical form, believe it or not. And one of those rare cases when it works better as a musical than a movie. Because the movie's just so weird, the musical gets to express what the hell's going on in his head.
Well, that's the thing. It's
like
it is
this
so
is not an exit.
theatrical.
I just got goosebumps. The last song of the show, you get to kind of see what the hell's going on with him. In the movie, you just write him off as just we can't help him.
I'm going to tell you about a fantasy that I have, Alice.
Is it about Benjamin Walker?
No, I have plenty of those too.
Did you see him in All My Sons?
Yes, he was remarkable.
God!
He wasn't in his underwear in that one.
He was so good.
No, this is a fantasy about American Psycho having a comeback. So Duncan and I have actually become pretty good friends. I live right by the Atlantic Theater, and when he was doing Secret Life of Bees, we just kept running into each other, and then we started just like sitting and talking for an hour every time we saw each other for several weeks. And I told him about this fantasy that I have. You know, the space where the club, the actual club Tunnel, which features heavily in the musical, it's no longer a club, but it obviously still exists on 12th Avenue. And I want to rent that space out, and like I've never wanted to direct theater before, but I want to direct an immersive production of American Psycho in the space that was Tunnel. And I have a theory
that sounds great.
I feel like if
immersive is a good idea, because I think the people in the front row, you know, the lady, I interrupted you, but she was bitching about how she got fake blood on her Burberry. What are you doing sitting in the front row, lady? You know, I think
I would die to get fake blood on my outfit.
It was on page 6. I'm going, oh my gosh. Lady.
I know, but also that article in page 6 sold so many tickets.
I know, right?
So I feel like we should end up getting her a new Burberry bag.
I think she probably was giggling when she said it, you know, even though, I don't know, the rumor was that she was very upset. But I remember thinking, well, what are you doing sitting in the front row? So I do think that people, you know, it would work even better as an immersive piece.
Totally. I want
really
people to go in wanting to get blood on them, you know? But I
got hit
have
with
this
those blood
theory.
Machines. I was not happy when it happened.
Really?
I got over it, yeah.
I have this theory that because of the placement of the two scenes in Tunnel in American Psycho, that basically all of the really graphic stuff happens between those two scenes. And I have a theory that walking into the club, he goes into this sort of drug-induced fantasy, and that's actually all one visit to Tunnel.
Well, I kind of think the whole thing is one, like a 5-minute memory in his head. That's what I think.
Yeah.
You know, the end, of course, I come on as the real estate lady at the end in my little suit. I think, why not have it be where he's waiting for me to show up, and he's looking at his own apartment that used to be covered with bloody walls, and he relives everything.
Like a flashback.
Yes, because the movie makes it feel like it's all a flash, or it's like all like this, his mind playing tricks on him the whole time. You never know what's real and what isn't real. But the thing that I loved about when it was a musical, you know, on stage, American Psycho, you could tell more what was real and what wasn't real, and that made it more sinister, as opposed to just writing somebody off because they're a lunatic. Maybe there's like they're doing it on purpose.
Well, I think
like
people
a
expect
Dexter kind of thing, you know.
People expect movies to be representations of reality, whereas in theater there's this suspension of disbelief that everyone knows that that's not actually happening.
Yeah, you're right. So that's
I know that's Alice Ripley, and I still have no trouble believing that that's the, you know, lady vomiting with her pink, you know, her mohawk in the tunnel bathroom.
That was so much
and
fun.
Also she's the real estate lady, and also she's the mom, and it's like I know those are all Alice Ripley, but I also emotionally connect with all these different characters. So there are levels of reality that we take for granted going to the theater in a way that I think people see a movie and they want to believe that that is actually the character.
That's a really good point. You know, and that's why we need both. We need the cinema, and we need musical. We need theater and musical theater, and we need pieces to be. I don't mind when they cross over, especially when it's well done. But we need pieces to be created for each, and to understand and respect why.
The question just has to be asked, what can we do with this medium that can't be done in any other medium? And I think that's why something like SpongeBob was, to me, such a triumph, is that they could have just taken... Did you see it?
You're mentioning all my favorite shows. SpongeBob was like my favorite show that year.
And we haven't even talked about Spring Awakening, which I know.
Cast recording that I've heard.
Me too.
Except now I'm starting to revisit La Cage aux Folles. And
which
to
one?
The whole
The
thing,
most original?
The original one.
It's so funny. I almost wore...
And now, like, that's my go-to musical theater
I almost
jam.
wore my I Am What I Am t-shirt today.
It's my new song I want to sing everywhere, but I want to sing the entire score, and I never want George Hearn to ever stop singing to me because it's such heaven. Those melodies, I'm twirling my hair. I'm like such a romantic.
You're like
I'm
crushing on
I'm a punker. I do have this punk side to me, definitely. But I'm a rebel without a clue, you know. In the end, I really just want to have a melody and have somebody croon to me.
You have more of a clue than you let people know. And it all comes back together because you are someone who can be punk rock and be classical. Like, you can be like Albie one day and,
It's a ripped sweatshirt with some pearls.
Right.
It works for me.
But you also will take the starring role above the title, and you'll also take this ensemble track in American Psycho, and you'll take, you'll go and play the biggest theater in New York, and then you'll also play the 60-seat thing, and you will be like, I don't always bring my brain with me, but then you'll have this incredibly intellectual, like discussion about something. You're a study in contradictions in all of the best ways, and it kind of boggles my mind, but I'm like, that's who I want to be. I want to be like the kind of person who can be like deep into something super geeky and intellectual, and then also, blast boy bands and pop music, and and
you're warming my heart. This is really sweet because I do love the Backstreet Boys.
Oh my gosh, me too.
When they were first out, those boy bands, I was in my 30s and I was too cool for all that and like too old to be whatever, just drawn into everything, and I was much more interested in just like liking things that nobody else liked.
I remember.
But now those boy bands, what I'm saying is like now I can't get enough of them.
Yeah,
the songs are so good,
and
you can't deny
and the
that.
producing
And
I think
adorable.
has so much. I'm so predictable. I always have a crush on the one who is, typecast as the baby brother. The one with the big eyes, who's really
big
just
blue eyes.
Cute.
I always like it's usually like the bass player, the one that just stands in the back, doesn't say very
The
much.
brooding,
like, the
dark
George
brooding one.
Although he didn't play bass, but yeah, it's like the one that doesn't say a lot. I don't know why. I want to get that person to talk to me.
Yeah.
Duncan's kind of
shy
quiet
one.
until you get him talking. Duncan Sheik.
He's so funny.
I just he's probably going, oh God, I got to cross the street. Here comes Alice Ripley. Because we used to say germ, meaning like going fangirl. Now we call it fangirling, but back in the day we would call it germing somebody when you just go, I like what you did in the American Psycho. You were good in the Beatles. But I have no shame when it comes to certain people, and he's one of them.
Yeah.
So I could just spend now a half hour talking about his album Ledger Domain that came out.
I know.
Okay,
it was during American Psycho.
The bitch is that we didn't get to make a cast album.
I know. Don't get me started.
But the reality is that the show came from London. It was the London production. They put a couple of people from New York in the cast, half of us or whatever, but it was London production. And the cast album from London was just coming out and we were opening. So that, that's what we signed up for. But Duncan's album just kind of was just sitting there on the merch table. And I'm going, God, I want to listen to that. And so the last day of the show, I was so sad. I loved doing that show. I loved the audience. It was a great job. So I gave myself like $75 and went downstairs to the merch table and bought whatever I wanted from the show. And one of the things I bought was the album, Ledger Domain. Then I listened to that CD for 2 years without stopping.
That's so good.
Everywhere I went. When I was on the road and I was in the hotel on the treadmill, I'm listening to Duncan Sheik's Ledger Domain.
It's so funny because people are like, oh, that's the Barely Breathing guy from the 90s. And I'm like, that's not really what he's doing right now.
I guess it must be weird. It must not be good because I thought of Barely Breathing as just the other day. And somebody was like, Alice, that was like 20 years ago.
I know.
25 years ago. And you look at him and you're thinking, wow, he was really like, he was a baby face back then, Duncan Sheik.
Totally. And I think...
What a great song, Barely Breathing.
It is a great song, but it just doesn't have the same sound as what he's doing now.
And I think that, I do think that he's on the cutting edge. I really do. And he actually plays an instrument. He writes music, plays instruments. He writes music. He knows how to meld the plugins and all the stuff you do with the digital world, with the actual instrument. I mean, we have not seen the last of him, and I'm really, really excited to know that for a fact.
Did you see Secret
I just
Life of
gurn
Bees?
him every time I see him. No, I want to, and I have a feeling that and the Winn-Dixie show, the Winn-Dixie show, I think is maybe his passion project.
Well, we'll see.
He's been working on that for a while.
I know that Bees has officially finished its run at the Atlantic Theater Company, but I know that there is talk about it. It is not. It's not over.
I love
and that's all I can say about that.
I love the book. I love the movie.
I've not seen Winn-Dixie, but I know
it's
that
going to
has
make me
a future
cry.
too.
His music is just, really, we could just talk about him for the
Well, I
next
know
45
Spring Awakening
minutes.
changed your life, and it changed
And I have
my
a great
life
story
too.
about that too. That
Tell
was the
me.
one that brought me back to life because, look, by the time Rent came out, I was in a run of Sunset Boulevard, and I was already kind of over it. You know what I mean? Like, I went to Rent, and I remember thinking, this is amazing. And if I were 15, this would rule my world. But I wasn't. I was 38 or whatever. You know, I was in my.
You weren't
I was
38.
mid-30s when I did Sunset Boulevard. I was like, whatever. The point is that I was looking at something else. I was looking for something else. I wasn't looking for somebody who rocks out. I was looking for something else. I didn't know what it was. And look, I don't go into these things and go, I'm not going to like the show. I'm not even saying that I didn't like Rent. I did. It just didn't do to me what it would have done to me when I was 15.
Yeah,
so
we
I
all
hope
have
you edit
stuff
this
like
part
that.
out because I don't want my friends to think I didn't
No.
like
First of all,
Rent.
we don't edit this show. It is what it is. But I know what you mean.
But here I'm saying, so this is kind of great because I went to Spring Awakening with none other than Anthony Rapp.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so this funny little story about Spring Awakening with Anthony Rapp is that one of us was living in L.A. I don't remember which one. One of us had a room at the New Yorker. I think it was me because as soon as I moved to L.A. after 9/11, everybody wanted me to come back and work on stuff. I was like, I waited for 2 years for something to happen, and now you guys want me to come back. So I was commuting, developing Next to Normal and developing 9 to 5 at the same time, back and forth. And so at one point I was staying in the New Yorker.
And Anthony was
there with me.
in the show and assistant directing it?
No, he was at the time, I think, on the road with Adam, doing a Rent concert, I think. And we were both in New York. We both wanted to go see Spring Awakening, or he had tickets to go. So this was like, it was well into the run. But Leah Michelle was there, and Steven was there. Steven Spinella was still in the cast.
Yeah, you're Steven Spinella from the dead.
And so he was like, do you want to go? Anthony said, I have an extra ticket. And I said, yes. And so we went to this hotel room. We had like a few hours, like 4 hours to kill. And we were both exhausted because had both been traveling. So he took a nap. This is going to be scandalous, and it's going to like.
I think
people
I
are gonna start
actually
talking
know
about
this
it.
story. Does
I
it
might
involve
have
you
told
being upside down?
Yes. I don't know how. Maybe I've told it before. I've maybe told it more than once.
I'm a deep researcher.
I mean, the best part about this, though, is how we were running down the street that comes in a few minutes. So Anthony's sleeping, and I'm doing a headstand, because I was really into headstands and yoga when I was first learning how to do yoga. And I kind of lost track of time, and I think maybe 20 minutes went by when only 5 minutes should have gone by, because I was the one who was supposed to be watching the clock and waking him up when it was ready to. This has really happened, and so I go, oh my God, it was like 7:25.
Oh no!
And I go,
wait,
Anthony.
And the
Anthony.
New Yorker is like by Penn Station, right?
Well, yeah. And so what happened was, we're like, oh my God, he gets that look of glee on his face. He doesn't panic like Anthony will just get excited. Like, this is going to be fun to see if we can make it. And so this is what I love to get to, is we were running up Broadway, down the middle of the street. Just running.
Like on the double yellow
because
line?
the sidewalks were too crowded, because it was like 3 minutes to 8 by the time when we walked in, you could tell everybody had been waiting for us to and we have these seats right in the middle of the orchestra. So everybody has to get up, and everybody watches those two people, the last two people come in right before the curtain starts. Oh my gosh, I just thought that was really funny.
But the good news
I got to run
is-
on the street with Anthony Rapp.
you got there before the songs began.
525,000.
Wrong show.
minutes. I love the show, but I just kind of, when I saw it, I wish that I had been 15 at the time, because I wanted it to rock my soul,
Totally.
and that's what Spring Awakening did. It really did. I think it's Duncan's music that did it, and just the cast itself is just so. It was shot out of a cannon.
That show, Spring Awakening, is totally responsible for where I am in my life right now, because without it, I would not have started my Broadway Girl alter ego. I lived very close, just less than a block from that theater, and somebody that I randomly gave a rock concert ticket to that I could have sold for a couple $100, I just was like, I wanted to go to a fan. I gave it to this guy. Turned out he worked for a Broadway group sales thing, and he was like, oh, I have a couple of tickets to this. I don't really know what it is, but it's a new musical. It's in previews on Broadway. Like, do you want to go? You gave me a ticket. I'll give you a ticket. And I was like, I think that I looked up Spring Awakening, and I thought it was a revival of a play from the 1800s because it's based on a play from 1800s. And I was like, oh, I'll probably hate this. It'll probably be super dry and old-fashioned, but I'll go, and then I can just go home at intermission if I don't like it. And I was so surprised, so blown away, and like I remember turning to him at intermission and going, we were in the center of the front row of the mezzanine, which is my favorite seat in any house, and I looked at him and I went, I think maybe this is amazing. And I ended up coming back once a week for the first 2 months.
Oh my gosh,
and once a
wow.
month for the entire run. I saw it.
I love that.
I saw it 18
enthusiasm.
times, I think. I mean, that's me. All enthusiasm all the time.
And the sublime melodies, those were Duncan's, but like the voices and the cast, it's remarkable. It's worth pointing out that, you know, it wasn't just an accident or coincidence that these beautiful voices, who's the other? Lauren Pritchard.
Oh my gosh, I know.
I mean,
Have you heard her solo
the
music?
thing is that like they're more beautiful because of Duncan's music.
Mm-hmm.
I really believe that, and so there's kind of some kind of magic that happens while it starts to spin out of the band. The sound.
And
then
remember,
the voice
the music
comes in.
director would always have bare feet, like sitting in the back, and like.
And he was far enough away so you couldn't see they were actually dirty bare feet. No, I'm just kidding. I loved the. As soon as I sat down, after I was like still catching my breath, and Anthony and I sat down, I just noticed the stage is open and the set is just the band's filing in, and the cast is kind of already on stage, and you can see there's espresso, and there was like this beautiful like dark dusky blue, like all my favorite colors, the rust and like burnt whatever sienna,
my favorite
black,
crayon color,
like ebony, like all shiny.
And there was that chalkboard
silver.
with all the songs, and there were some that had been cut from the show that they left on there but crossed out.
I love
it was
the
like
costumes,
everything about it.
And it's just the thing like that. There was a magic that happens when something like that happens. You know what we're describing with Spring Awakening, where you don't see the seams. You don't really realize that Leah Michelle being there, nobody else can do it but her. Mm. Nobody else can do it but her in that moment. It's hers, and that's why it's so beautiful. Because she was the original one.
Yep.
You know, there is something about the original cast that there's like a magic it's because everything is on purpose. They were all chosen on purpose, and that's the thing that sometimes people might not realize. You know, when they so easily toss something off that isn't their flavor or their taste or whatever, you know, you still have to have respect.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
For
of course.
the whole process, and that the people are doing this because they want to create joy, and
like
they do have high standards.
Best.
And when you get the right team together, you know, everybody puts all their ideas in, and the best idea is obvious to everybody.
I don't think that we should dismiss the idea of like a truly incredible replacement, though, because I know
that's
like,
a different subject and another thing to look at for sure.
I mean, look at you as Fantine. You know what I mean? You weren't the original Fantine, but you were like a definitive Fantine.
Oh man, and you know what? It's funny because I don't know if people what they might expect, but somebody might ask me, you know, something like, what's your favorite role you ever played?
Mm-hmm.
Or what show would you like to do right now? And I always feel like maybe I'm not giving them the answer they want, because I'll say something like, well, my favorite role I've ever played, I think, is Margaret White in Carrie. And their faces are like, what? I thought it was going to be, you know, I was kind of reading their minds. And then the role that I would love to do now until the end of time is Fantine in Les Mis. It's like, that show is just so, it's such a masterpiece, Les Mis. It's my favorite show. It's my favorite score. It makes it easy for the actor. You just put on your outfit and you step on stage, and you're
just there.
The story comes through you. You don't have to make connections, which I have no problem with that. But you don't have to do that with Les Mis. It's so solid that the way that it's written and put together, and it's so beautiful. I can go to a high school production or community production. That's not to say that they wouldn't be good productions, but you know, and what I mean is it catches me by surprise. I'll go to Les Mis, and the last scene comes in, and she's like, "Take my hand, I'll lead you to salvation." I like the Charlie Brown tears like fly out of my face.
You just made me cry by singing it like
at a
directly
right angle,
to me.
like just like 90 degrees. Just take my money, whatever you need me to do to just make sure that the show is always happening somewhere. And it just closed in London, and I never got to see that production. That makes me sad because I will say that my favorite soundtrack for Les Mis is without a doubt the original London production.
Really?
Well, the French production would be original, I guess, but
the original English language version. I remember I fell in love with Les Mis at
with
10.
Patty as Fantine.
Mm-hmm. I asked for the Les Mis. I had Les Mis on tape. I wore
Francis
it out.
Raffel.
I asked for it on CD. And I'd been listening to the original Broadway production. I was 10 years old. I've been listening to it on cassette, broke the cassette, asked for it on CD for Christmas, and I got the London cast. And it was before I really understood about different casts. I sort of thought it was like an album, the way that like the Rolling Stones would put out an album or whoever, that it was just the same. And some of Gavroche's lines were different on the London cast recording than their Broadway cast recording. And I was like, this is not the show I
know.
love.
Like they cut Gavroche's song. They laugh at me, these fellas, just because I am small. They laugh at me because I'm not 100 feet tall. I tell them there's a lot to learn down here on the ground. The world is big, but little people turn it all around. Oh my God, I'm so full of myself. But when I realized that they had cut that song, I just was like, okay, I'm never straying from the London recording now. Because it's on, and I think that it's on that one. And I think that was my mother's favorite show too. I remember at one point she said, will you find, this is back before the internet, she's like, will you, because I was the one who lived in New York, I could get anything,
right. Go to the Tower Records.
I need another Les Mis. I've worn mine out. I don't want any other version but the London version. That's her voice. Oh, I miss my mother. She would love you. She'd be like, can you believe that Laura Heywood? Wow, she's dynamite. What a dynamo she is.
You know that I'm going to take that audio.
She's super.
I don't want to interrupt you because I'm going to totally
soundbite.
I'm going to be like
a wild spot.
I'm going to be like quote you on my website and be like, Alice Ripley says her mom
I'll give you
say.
wild spots anytime you want, Laura. At the end, we'll
best.
do a whole bunch of them in a row.
I'm going to tell you something crazy about Fantine that I just learned. She's 28 years old.
I know, right? That's
I always
older
thought
than I thought she was.
I always thought she was like the old lady of the cast. And then I had my 40th birthday this year, and I was like, oh, I'm 12 years older than the old lady.
Well, I mean, really, Fantine she could be any age, but not really because you didn't live that long.
Right, of course. That's the difference.
And she has a young child that she puts first, and, I don't know if that would happen unless you were kind of young yourself, and she gives everything, and I don't know if that would happen. Really.
I just think that I always identify with the ingenue. I'm like, I'm a Cosette, or more like I'm an Eponine. But if I'm Eponine, then Fantine has to be, a different generation than me.
I think I'm Eponine now. I really do. That I sing on my own. That's my song that everybody wants to hear. I Dreamed a Dream, and that was my mother's favorite song. Will you sing I Dreamed a Dream for me? And, people will say, will you sing I Dreamed a Dream? And I'll usually go, I have to be talked into it, not because I don't love it. It's just so sad. The last line of the song is, now life has killed the dream I dreamed. Let's all let's all cry right now. But at least Eponine ends with, I love him. I love, there's some hope there.
Yeah, she's
so I usually sing
tragic,
her song.
but she's hopeful.
I usually sing on my own, and I went to see Francis Raffel. We're friends now. We met, and we've become acquaintances, I'll say, and I'm just I'm trying to be so controlled about.
I'm sure she's
about my
fanboying over you too.
That it's Francis Raffel, you guys. And she sings on my own in her set when she does it, but she does it like a 50s mid-tempo. She kind of brings it up, and she walks around and holds the microphone into the audience, into their areas, and if they want to sing, they can take a verse or take a couple words.
Do you ever perform it in your set? I know you have concerts coming up at 54 Below.
I have performed. It's not in my set. It hasn't been for a while, but I'll sing it solo if somebody wants to hear, maybe for an audition, or if somebody wants to hear a song from Les Mis. That would be.
You'll be like, I won't do I Dreamed a Dream, but here's On My Own.
I would love to include it in my Ripley prescription set, which is the set about my broken heart and how I went from pop rock music to musical theater, and how musical theater mended my heart back together and allowed me to still rock out. Mm-hmm. So On My Own can kind of fit in the middle there, of the show tunes that I do at the end of that set. So,
right.
But I mean, it stands on its own. You can sing it anywhere.
So coming up on August 29th and 30th, you're going to be at 54 Below with your band, with Ripley the band, which I want to call Ripley the Band because it's
all caps.
Because
yeah.
it's always
you know,
written
I
in all
look at those
caps.
old posts now and I go, I guess I can see like that was annoying. I was just trying to. It's like I'm loud and I want you to look at me.
I love it.
So really, you're supposed to laugh at it. But I know I come across as sometimes people just want to take me too seriously. So let's do some stand up. We'll do a stand up routine and we'll do a podcast. You and
Sounds
me.
good. I'm
Figure
not
that
doing
out.
stand-up, but I'll be there to support you doing it.
It's just about self-deprecation. We can all do that.
So Jen Damiano is going to be your special guest at that show.
So I asked Jen to join me. Now this set, the reason why it's the Ripley the Band show, there's what do you hell? Not an ampersand. Ampersand, is that what it's
I
called?
think that's the and sign.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Like the at.
Oh, the at.
Sign,
That's
at
yeah.
sign.
That's
What is that called?
The at sign.
That's it.
I think so. I'll
Okay.
Google it.
Well, that's my social media
Ripley the Band. Yeah.
handle. Is that what you call it?
Your handle, yeah.
So that's kind of a way to, so people don't have to worry about how to find me later. Like it's in the title of the show, and this is it's a new set that's going to be all my music. It's been a while since I did a set of my own music. It's been a number of years, and I know that people have been asking me to do it. So it's going to be all Alice Ripley music. And what's exciting is that Jennifer is going to take some of the songs and sing the lead, and I'll back her up. That's really exciting to me because usually I sing my songs, so hearing somebody else sing them, I think maybe the song will finally graduate to being finished. Like, it's done now.
Yeah, that's cool. That's great.
I'll also play a few on my guitar and sing by myself.
Well, I will be there.
Oh, good.
And I'm definitely coming to see the Pink Unicorn. And believe it or not, we only have a couple minutes left in the show.
Can't believe it.
I believe very firmly that there is no excuse for having any kind of public platform if we're not trying to use it to make the world a better place. So I always invite my guests to bring in a cause that they are passionate about. And as we mentioned earlier, yours is the Alzheimer's Foundation of America. You and I have both lost people to Alzheimer's. And I'm going to make a donation to the Alzheimer's Foundation today on your behalf. And I'm going to ask my listeners to do the same because a whole bunch of little drops can make a big splash. And if there is a cause that is ultimately going to affect everybody, I think we are all likely to unfortunately lose somebody to Alzheimer's or be affected by it. And so if we all put a few bucks in it now, it'll come back around and help us and those we love.
I think you're right. I thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it.
Of course, it's the least I can do. You know, you gave me an hour of your time today and have brought me so much joy that to help a cause that's important to you is critical.
You know, Laura, I think it's important too to just talk about your grandma, just to mention my dad, just to mention their names. I think is important to help us stay connected, and I think that's an important way to battle this disease.
What's your dad's name?
Dick.
My
Richard.
grandmother was Jean. And we're out of time, but Alice Ripley, I love
that's
you so
sweet.
much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Laura. This is fun.
Absolutely. Thanks, Alice.